While you are working on getting started with your research paper for a short story or more than one short story, be sure to review the handouts that I have given you. You'll see them in announcements. You'll also see them in Module 7 research essay. So you have handouts here as well. Be sure to check your class. This may not be your class that we're looking at now, so make sure you check your class for due dates and deadlines. These are the same things you got in class as a handout, so if for some reason it doesn't open, you should still have your handout from class. This is the sample of what your first assignment will be. You're just going to write a working thesis, and I call this a working bibliography. You can call it a preliminary works cited. I've named it working bibliography because these are the sources I think I will use for my research paper. And the next assignment is going to be an annotated bibliography, so I wanted to make sure that I remembered to use the term bibliography on the next assignment, but you can remember that without having to do that this way here. What do you need to know? Use your handout that you got at the very beginning of the semester to format your works cited correctly. If there's an author, you put last name, comma, first name, and remember that article titles go in quotation marks. Titles of the containers, whatever's after the title and quotation mark is probably the container. Journals, websites, things like that. Those go in italics. Also, databases, like this one is a database, that goes in italics. Here's an example of what your source should look like for the short story if you have a work from the textbook. If your work was a handout or is just on Blackboard and not in the textbook, you can just click on your class, click on Module 5 short story, and take a look at your different short story folders. For example, if you're writing about the flowers, I have already done the works cited for you. Copy, paste, easy as that. If you are going to research recitatif and you want scholarly articles, or for any of the short stories that you want scholarly articles, you have to use articles that I have approved, and so you will know that in the folder scholarly articles for any of the short stories, again, that's just in each short story folder. Click on the words, not on the folder, and then click on the thing that says scholarly articles, and then you can choose any of these. You need at least 3 secondary sources and a primary source. The secondary sources are, if you are doing option 1 and you are doing more of a text-based research paper, then your articles will be about the short story. If you are going to do more of the cultural sociological research paper and you're going to write about how some aspect of psychology or sociology could be applied to what you're seeing thematically, symbolically, metaphorically, however you want to discuss it in one or more short stories, then your secondary sources will probably be about that psychological thing. So, for instance, if you wanted to write about herd mentality, then you may use sources that just discuss herd mentality, groupthink, things like that. So those sources probably aren't going to say anything about your specific short story. Then you can show off your critical thinking skills by applying that psychological phenomenon or idea to the short story. Okay, so either way, that's why you have 2 options on your handout about the short story. These are the short stories in general. To find the research essay handouts, click on Module 7. And you can see those here. So I did one handout that's just a bunch of ideas that, as I mentioned, I wrote about at 4 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't get these ideas to go away. So you can just look at my ideas if you wish. This part is not, part of the assignment. I just gave you a handout so that if you felt stuck, you could get some ideas that I think are interesting. But you're welcome to use your own ideas, of course. So if you are, sorry, this thing always does this. The other handout you got in class the other day was the research handout with all the details. And this was the sample working thesis preliminary works cited with the free writing, or what I call the brain dump. So let me open the other assignment sheet that you got and bring it over here. Sorry, working on two screens here. So here are those two approaches that we were talking about, and the places to find more detail about those approaches are listed here. Textbook page numbers, appendix, so that back of the textbook, pages A3 through A9 for an emphasis on the text, where your sources, your secondary sources, will be about the short story. And if you want to choose a sociological or psychological approach, your secondary sources might be about the short stories, but they could just be about whatever aspect of psychology that interests you. So there you go. What should you do if you feel stuck and feel like you need someone to go over this with you individually? You can take your handouts, especially the sample of the first assignment, and go to the tutoring lab. So on your Blackboard shell under Learner Support, click Tutoring, and you can see that you can go to the 8th floor of the Bailey Building. You do not have to have an appointment, but you can make an appointment if you would like. So you can email or call, or you can go to upswing.io and make an appointment to meet with a tutor. But certainly calling is fine too. Remember the hours, so you can't just call in the middle of the night. But here are the hours listed. And here's the phone number and the email, which again, you can find in your class under Learner Support at Tutoring. So in addition to having a tutor help you, I will post or link a video on how to create the works cited for you. I'll put a couple of videos. If you are using a citation generator, I have one that I use in particular, so I can add that to the end of this video. So watch that. Make sure that your works cited is done in MLA format, and go ahead and read all the research you can. That's going to be the big thing. Do not try to come up with a thesis statement before you have researched. So first, research. Click on the story you're interested in. Then find scholarly articles. Here's one. There you go, 4. So I would read all 4 of those and then see what strikes my interest before I even start to try to think of a thesis. Students who try to think of a thesis and then try to do the research to match the thesis usually end up unhappy with what they are researching, or they cannot find research to support their thesis. And the point of research is really not to find evidence for something that you already think or you already know. The point of research is to learn new things and to see something in a way you might not have thought of it before. And then you have something that you can really get interested in and interact with. So you want to be able to engage with the secondary sources and the primary source Again, the primary source will be the short story or short stories. Secondary sources will be the sources that you use to write about the short story. You'll need at least 3 secondary sources and at least 1 primary source. So the point is to engage with all the texts, not to prove something that you already think or that you already know before doing any research. The point is to do the research first. That's why your works cited, your first one, is preliminary. Go and find sources that you are reading and submit those. I'm requiring this so that you don't wait till the last minute and try to do this research paper all at once. All right. If you need help, please spend time with a tutor in the tutoring lab. That's what they're there for, and they're glad to help.